All right, we're live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and all distinguished guests. My name is Vincent Hannum. This is Some Civil War Poetry, and it is 7:31 in the morning Central Standard Time. It is Wednesday, July 22nd. What else about the calendar can I tell you? Well, that's it. Neowise is passing out of our sights, and yet things are just starting to heat up here in good old US of A. So just before I get on with the poetry, just wanted to call your attention to Portland, and if you haven't been keeping up with the news on that one, please do so. Stay an informed citizen, and just know that hey, we may be in the 21st century, but like we've been reading, anything is possible. Unfortunately, when federal troops unilaterally start cracking down on protesters. So just keep it in mind as you live your American life, if that's the kind of America you want to live in. So moving on to the poetry. Yesterday, we read some Walt Whitman, the second time in this book. Not the second time, like literally in my life, I've ever read Walt Whitman. I'm sure I read Oh Captain, My Captain at some point, like in high school or something. But yeah, I'll be honest. Again, I just hadn't drunk from that well so deeply and richly before. So I'm totally on that train. And just as I was flipping ahead, there's a lot more Whitman to come in this book. As a friend of the pod once said, he commented on the post, my post. He said Whitman and Dickinson and another guy, I forget his name, totally broke open 19th century verse, and I'm at least based on this book, I'm apt to agree with that. So no Whitman or Dickinson today. We have for our Union poem a man named Bret Harte. I don't see a lot of Brets from the past, so that's interesting. Bret Harte lived from 1836 to 1902. Was born in Albany, New York. Albany. I forget which one it is. Comment below Albany or Albany. We must figure this out. In 1854, he moved to California. He became a popular chronicler of California pioneer life through poems, stories, and sketches published in The Californian and The Overland Monthly, which he also edited. In 1878, he became a United States consul and was appointed to Krefeld, Germany, and later Glasgow. He eventually settled in London. All right, so Bret Harte, seemingly our first Californian in this collection. And his poem today is called The Reveille, which I believe that is how it's pronounced. This poem and our Confederate poem is shared down below in the description. There's links out to both of those. And before we get started, again, quick, this book is called Poetry of the Civil War. It's an anthology I had on my shelf, and I thought, hey, I would like to read that, but what a great way to force oneself to read poetry than with others. So it is divided into two sides, so to speak, the blue side and the gray side, both of which, of course, refer to the Union and Confederate sides. So with that in mind, Bret Harte, clearly a Unionist, and let's see what he has to say about his time, at least poetically. Hark! I hear the tramp of thousands, and of armed men the hum. Lo! A nation's hosts have gathered round the quick alarming drum, saying, Come, freemen, come, ere your heritage be wasted, said the quick alarming drum. Let me of my heart take counsel, war is not of life the sum, who shall stay and reap the harvest when the autumn days shall come? But the drum echoed, Come, Death shall reap the braver harvest, said the solemn sounding drum. But when won the coming battle, what of profit springs therefrom? What if conquest, subjugation, even greater ills become? But the drum answered, "Come, you must do the sum to prove it," said the Yankee answering drum. What if, mid the cannon's thunder, whistling shot and bursting bomb, when my brothers fall around me, should my heart grow cold and numb? But the drum answered, "Come, better there in death united than in life a recreant. Come." Thus they answered, hoping, fearing, some in faith and doubting some, till a trumpet voice proclaiming said, "My chosen people come." Then the drum, lo, was dumb, for the great heart of the nation throbbing answered, "Lord, we come." I'm not going to do it now, but I think that poem deserves a second read just to get the cadence down correctly. I didn't realize that there was a man and a drum speaking to each other. And I think I broke up those lines a little bit more than they deserved. But hey, that's The Reveille by Bret Harte. And we'll put a pin in the Union side for now. We'll move on to our Confederate poem. It is called The Unknown Dead. It is by a poet named Henry Timrod, who has shown up several times in this show. Henry Timrod, I can tell you now, was from Charleston, South Carolina. Very proud of that fact. He often writes about his South Carolina home. And he lived from 1829 to 1867. Was born in Charleston, South Carolina, the son of a bookbinder and minor poet. The younger Timrod's first collection of verses, poems, was published in 1860. An impassioned supporter of the Confederacy, he twice enlisted but was discharged both times due to ill health. For a time, he worked as a war correspondent for the Charleston Mercury. In 1864, he moved to Columbia, where he edited the daily South Carolinian. When the city was burned in February 1865, Timrod was reduced to extreme poverty from which he never recovered. His health continued to deteriorate, and he died of tuberculosis. In 1867, 2 years after the war. So that's Henry Timrod. I think he's definitely the Southern poet most featured in this book. Like for the Northern side, there's seemingly dozens of Whitmans and Dickinsons and Holmeses, but the Confederate poems all seem to be singular, except Timrod. I've grown to know his name. So here's his poem called "The Unknown Dead." The rain is plashing on my sill, but all the winds of heaven are still, and so it falls with that dull sound which thrills us in the churchyard ground, when the first spadeful drops like lead upon the coffin of the dead. Beyond my streaming window pane, I cannot see the neighboring vane, yet from its old familiar tower the bell comes, muffled through the shower. What strange and unsuspected link of feeling touched has made me think, while with a vacant soul and eye I watch the gray and stony sky, of nameless graves on battle plains, washed by a single winter's rains, where some beneath Virginian hills, and some by green Atlantic rills, some by the waters of the west, a myriad unknown heroes rest. Ah, not the chiefs who dying see their flags in front of victory, or at their life blood's noble cost, pay for a battle nobly lost, claim from their monumental beds the bitterest tears a nation sheds. Beneath yon lonely mound, the spot by all save some fond few forgot, lie the true martyrs of the fight, which strikes for freedom and for right. Of them their patriot zeal and pride, the lofty faith that with them died, no grateful page shall farther tell than that so many bravely fell. And we can only dimly guess what worlds of all this world's distress, what utter woe, despair, and dearth their fate has brought to many a hearth. Just such a sky as this should weep above them always where they sleep. Yet haply at this very hour, their graves are like a lover's bower, and nature's self, with eyes unwet, oblivious of the crimson debt to which she owes her April grace, laughs gaily o'er their burial place. Wow, that poem really flowed. I feel like I also should reread that one, but maybe a little slower next time. Um, yeah, reading poetry is fun, and I'm glad I'm doing this show. Probably about 2 weeks left, considering the length of this one, and then we'll move on to something else, something new. Got some other plans cooking. So for tomorrow's show coming at you, we have the same setup: one blue, one gray. Who will win the Union? Um, the Union poem is by James Jeffrey Roche, and the Confederate poem is by Sidney Lanier. That poem is called The Dying Words of Stonewall Jackson. And Roche's poem is called Gettysburg. So stay tuned. I got a lot of poetry to read, a lot of history to catch up on, and a lot of current events to stay smart about. So with all that in mind, take care. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. So long.